All right, so grunge. I think this over time should be more about the idea of assumption. The first inclination is that I am all about kind of streetwear, hip hop. I'm coming from that angle. But I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that I come from a musical background. Studied music my entire life. I love all forms of music. I would never attribute myself to being a part of the grunge movement. I just like good music. If you're a person like me who just likes good music, you're gonna listen to everything. If it's good, it's good. I love Soundgarden's Super Unknown album. I love albums by anybody who makes good music, right? I like Mayor Hawthorne, right? So there's this idea of assumption that I think that runs deep in lifestyle communities, because that's what all these styles are. When we talk about grunge, when we talk about hip hop, when we talk about punk or something like that, a lot of individuals get incredibly defensive about those things because it was a part of a lifestyle. And anybody who kind of takes from that lifestyle and puts it on the world stage and has nothing to do with it, they feel the need to defend it. They feel the need to get mad about it because they were like, yo, we lived through that. That was what we were. And now you're just taking that identity because you think it's cool. And you see that everywhere. You see it with skaters, you see it with people who are in other different types of music, but you never hear that sentiment in contemporary fashion, which is quite odd. Those individuals who are ridiculously into a subculture are very defensive of it. And the same thing goes for grunge. And I'll be real with you. I have sentiments. I have reservations about calling it grunge because I know how individuals who grew up during that period feel about that term. Because the term grunge literally means, it's like slang for dirty. Right? So when you're calling all of these individuals dirty, like it's a grunge sound, it's dirty, it takes away from the actual message of the music, of the movement. The movement wasn't dirty. The movement was casting a light on people's thoughts and their process, mental health for the most part, social awareness. It was a big deal, right? And you think of all those 90s kids who grew up listening to Nirvana, Soundgarden, listening to Pearl Jam, listening to all these bands, right? And you're gonna tell them that their stuff is dirty when all of the subject matter was more than that. It was more than just a dirty sound, right? You go into the lyrics of one of my favorite songs by Soundgarden was Black Hole Sun. Black hole sun, won't you come and wash away the rain? So I love that song. And it meant so much to me when I was listening to that growing up because it spoke to me. That kind of music just speaks to you, right? You have to listen to it. And to have that pilfered and have the style that these individuals were portraying, whether it was on their music videos, or in public, to have it pilfered by a generation that doesn't appreciate where it came from, I can see where people would get pretty upset about it. And the whole Jerry Lorenzo thing that we mentioned, I think a lot of people who are in the grunge movement are in the alternative rock movement. I should say that more often because it's a little bit better. The musical movement, that rock movement, they look at that as a betrayal. Like, dude, you're gonna make this popular and make everybody wear it, right? Like that just doesn't make any sense, right? But and on the other end, I have to defend a person like Jerry Lorenzo to capitalize on it, right? To capitalize on that look, because that's what fashion is, unfortunately. So I'm stuck in between two different thought processes here when it comes to the grunge aesthetic, because on one end I recognize the cultural relevance of that movement, of that 90s rock movement, and then on the other hand I look at opportunity, right, to cast a light on it, to give it more, I just said it, to cast a light on it, to give it even, give it more of the shine it deserves. But I also think individuals who attach themselves to grunge, they really should go back and listen to the music from that era, right? I mean, it's timeless. It's timeless. It's timeless, right? Forget the new, Chris Cornell, rest in peace. Forget that. Forget his solo album. It had some few tracks on there that were okay. But, listen to the albums, right? Right? Listen to the albums, listen to the music from that time, and then you begin to appreciate it so much more. And I would say that with punk too. I'm not necessarily a person that's into the punk movement. I'll be honest about that. And I think a lot of people, when we did the breakdown of punk, became very defensive about it. As far as I'm concerned, what I like to do is I just like to be an observer of things. But there are things that I'm closer to. For instance, somebody says, he's not a part of the punk movement, but I'm a big fan and a avid follower of THECASUAL and Jun Takahashi, who are incredibly involved in that punk movement. So for me, in a indirect way, I am a fan of it, but through fashion, through anti-fashion, right? Through this idea of creation physically. I may not be into the music, but one angle I am definitely into. I live in a country where punk is literally the one subculture that nearly every popular brand has attached itself to. One of the things that I personally get is the fact that I am a brown person. I am a dark-skinned person, relatively speaking, who lives in Japan, right? I'm a black person who lives in Japan, who speaks Japanese, that talks about fashion. And the first inclination that a lot of people get is that I'm some sort of Japanophile, weeb, whatever, what have you. Do I like certain things that are Japanese? Of course. Right? Of course, I wouldn't be living in Japan if I didn't. Do I obsess over those things? No, I'd like to think that I'm critical of them, whether it's a Japanese label or if it's a particular thing in Japan that I think needs some sort of constructive criticism, I'll do it. Whereas if I was Asian, it doesn't matter what Asian I was. If I was Chinese, if I was Korean, if I was Filipino, and I was talking about Japanese fashion, I don't think those same labels would be hurled at me with as much frequency. Maybe they'd still be out there, but it'd be almost understood, oh, he's Asian, so he can talk about that kind of stuff. So it's the way that our mind wraps around things. And I say that to talk more about the grunge thing. It's certainly the aesthetic that makes people look at it like he can't possibly be about this, because I remember what the movement is about, and he's only attaching himself, or he or she is only attaching themselves to that because it's currently in trend, it's currently in vogue, it's currently popular, because Justin Bieber wears it, right? And that's not where it comes from, and I don't like that representation of something that I grew up with or I was a part of. And I get that. That being said, I like to do a little bit of business on the end of these. For all the business casts, it's the business section. So you guys will get some information on how you can utilize certain lifestyles and subcultures to your benefit. One of the things that the grunge aesthetic has really done was able to define exactly what that aesthetic was. And they attached as it was becoming more popular in the 2010s, the one thing that was, prevalent throughout the entire style was distressed jeans, right? Distressed denim, overworked, reworked clothing, and band tees, right? This is called a moment, right? This is when you start getting into trend forecasting and you start understanding what the tenor of fashion is. A lot of individuals who start their own labels will take the tenor of what's happening at the moment and use that to their advantage. And this is something that you can use as a business person, as an entrepreneur, to elevate whatever label that you are working on, or elevate your collections, or whatever would have you. For instance, Iris Van Herpen. I never get her name right, but she's a wonderful designer. Don't get me wrong, she's great. She's talented, but she's no more talented than an individual who went to her same school, to individuals who study fashion all the time. She is talented, but what she did was she took the tenor of what was happening at the time, which was 3D printing was all the rage when she was first coming up. And so she used 3D printing as kind of a buzzword for her. Like, yeah, I did this with 3D printing, right? And so using the buzzword of something that's new, she was able to create what she wanted, not only what she wanted, but also create something that had never been done before. It was unique, right? And it was catchy. It was a buzzword. It just so happened that she was very talented at designing as well, and using new techniques to create something that nobody else was creating. As an entrepreneur, it is your job first and foremost to solve a problem. Iris solved the problem via design. How can I mix 3D with fashion? And let's do it, right? Let's make this idea happen, and just take away all of the I can't do's or whatever, what have you, and just go about doing that. And so as a person who is starting a collection, your first job is to solve a problem. It doesn't have to be a problem that everybody's looking for. It just has to be a problem that's out in the world, right? So for instance, sustainable fashion is a big buzzword right now. So a lot of people are using sustainable fashion techniques to, create this buzz around their brand, but that movement is almost too late, right? So you can use something else that's on the cusp of happening. I don't know what that is, but I probably have an idea what that is, but I have to do a little bit more research before we get into it. Just to give you an idea, I personally think that a lot smaller collections are going to happen, and a lot more handmade items are going to happen, even with smaller brands, especially in this new climate. I think handmade stuff, reducing carbon footprint and using less materials are going to be a big thing going forward. Rework, remake is definitely something that's in the purview that you should be looking at. So that's just for you guys. That's what I think. But knowing what is going to happen and forecasting and using your ability to design to meet the moment is going to be incredibly useful for you in the future. And that's the business take on this. Be it grunge, be it punk, be it hip hop, be it street, whatever path that you take, understanding the tenor of the moment and forecasting and understanding that you have to solve a problem will definitely put you in a better position to succeed, and it'll also put you in a better position to find out who your true customers are and who you really want to be selling to. So that's what you need going forward, and I hope that you take that with you and use it to your benefit, because it's going to be great going. It's not as doom and gloom as you might think, even with the current climate that we're living in right now. It's not as doom and gloom. It's just going to change, and when things change, sometimes things change for the better. And just think of this moment as wiping the slate clean and finding new ways to operate. So that's all I got for you today. Thank you guys so much for joining me on Overtime. This is where I get to kind of like spill some of the thoughts that I have out there. But for the most part, this is, it's fun to do. And I'm glad that you guys stick around and listen. That being said, thank you guys so much for joining. As always, keep it locked right here. You guys, I don't have to say the ending. You know what it is. Keep it casual. Yoroshiku. I'll see you guys in a minute.